We have been looking again at more of your questions and points that you've been making to us at League Sunday. And just to remind you, the Twitter address is @LeagueSundayRTE. Well, this week, to answer some of those questions, we have in studio Brendan Cummins, former Tipperary goalkeeper, of course, and Tomás Mulcahy, whom you well know from the Sunday game from his days playing with Cork. And gentlemen, some very interesting questions. And the first one to start us off with comes from Jim Walsh. And Jim is talking about the retirement, of course, recently of Tony Browne, the Waterford legend, and posing the point, Tony played, lads, for 23 years for Waterford. Now, I know the two of you had long and successful careers, but he's wondering, is it possible in the modern game for a hurler to actually play for anything close to as long as that, even, I suppose, maybe 10 years?
Yeah, it's obviously going to be very, very difficult. I think the pace of the game now, the intensity, players' bodies might be able to hold up to it, but I'm not too sure whether they'll be able to have the time to do it, because family life comes into the equation once guys get into 28, 29, 30. Kids arrive on then, like me, at age 30, 31, and suddenly then life changes. So it's hard to commit then for 5-6 days of the week is what the modern player is now committing to. So getting the time to do it is really what stops you. Is
that a key factor in it, Tomás? Is it just time? Or have changing methods changed so much that it's hard to sort of keep going for that length of time?
I think changing methods and the intensity in the game and the scrutiny in the game has changed from whenever I was playing, right? I mean, I played for 12 or 13 years, right? I mean, to take into consideration that Tony Browne played for 23 years, I mean, you're talking about a guy at 18 up to 43, 44 years of age. I can never see that happening. I mean, a guy gets to kind of late teens to early 30s, people would say his time is up, he's had his day, whether he has had 5 or 6 years or intercounty level or 10 or 11. So I mean, great credit due to the man himself. To keep the physical fitness levels that he had to play at the highest level was just pure class on his behalf.
And I suppose the bottom line really as well with all of this, Brendan, is in every sport there was an exception to the rule. Tony would have been an exception in hurling, same as kind of Ryan Giggs would have been, would say, with Manchester United, and that you will get one player that can do it.
Absolutely, and I think that's the way Tony was. He looked after himself. He might have come in on the Waterford panel until March or April, but he was doing his work in the background. He was minding himself, you know, when other lads were going out, Tony'd stay in, you know, all this kind of thing. And that's where it has to be.
Mean, this man had 20 years in goal, but it was easy for him. Sure, he did no running inside the goal, right? You know, so.
You've guys handing you hurling balls for puck outs and all those great, but you're right, the physical wear and tear. You've guys going to gyms now, which they weren't doing maybe in the past and to most of the time, but your hits are harder and they last longer on you. The following day you wake up twice as sore.
Yeah. By the way, Tomás, I never saw a hurling ball going past me in the gym at 120 miles an hour.
I never saw a gym when I was playing either.
Another question from the same Jim Walsh, by the way, to follow up on that thing about Tony Browne. And again, he's talking about Waterford. Now, he's raising the point that, you know, Waterford are taking this break for 4 weeks to allow the clubs and so on. And he says that's a good thing. But the flip side of that is then it cuts down on the preparation time they have to prepare for their championship match, of course, against Cork. How do you see it?
Yeah, I would. I don't really agree with it, to be honest with you. I think coming from the Intercounty setup in the last 3 or 4 years, every time you mention the dressing room, it's about family, it's about togetherness, about bonding. And players not being together to play at an elite sport level for a 4-week period, I think, even if they just met up, they don't necessarily have to go training or run around the field. But they do need to get together just to keep linked in with each other. And also, like, from a tactics point of view, you've only 3 weeks then to prepare coming up for the Cork game. And Cork, I think, may have stolen the march.
And I take your point, Brendan, that is a very valid point. But the other side of it then, the people will say, Tomás, is, and this is the constant thing we hear, you know, the clubs are not getting enough of a fair shake of it and all this kind of stuff, and they're kind of playing second fiddle to the county team. And
yeah, I mean, I think in one sense it's a good idea, but I suppose for Waterford, when you're trying to build a team, right, if it was in Kilkenny and they've had the success that they've had, but in Waterford you're trying to build a team on the back of a successful minor team last year, so there's new blood and new talent coming into the scene. But I do agree with you, Michael. The club scene is where the stars of tomorrow are going to come from, right, and there has to be some sort of a structure put in place for these guys. And I think sometimes intercounty training can be counterproductive on the basis that you're together for 5 or 6 weeks if you're going 3 or 4 nights a week without anything to actually maybe a game at the weekend. And sometimes it can be a bit of a fresh approach by leaving the guys go back to their club, train with your club, maybe play a match with the club, but certainly with the way intercounty level is gone, there's nothing wrong having them in one night or maybe 2 nights a week. If it doesn't, as Brenda said, not for training, but just as a bonding session, have them together.
Well, I suppose it is the perennial debate as to which is the best and which is the ideal way and what way you go about it, and we might not be able to solve that one. But let's see if we can answer the next man's question. This comes from Nicholas McAtamney. And Nicholas wants to know, and maybe Brenda, I might put this to you first because you're the most recently retired of the two of you.
Thanks,
how do you replace the big days that you experience, I suppose, playing in Munster finals, playing in Croke Park, playing in All-Ireland finals, the very top level of the game, and when that finishes, does it leave a void, and how do you fill it?
Yeah, it leaves a void, all right. You keep involved with the game. For me, it's down to my club, because Ballybacon, to be fair, would have done an awful lot to allow me to go and play with Tipperary. So I'm putting my focus now has gone solely back and giving them rewards back, I suppose, for the patience they showed with me. But it is, I mean, some players have struggled with it, there's no doubt about that. For me, my heart is racing an awful lot faster watching the games now, and there is an edge that I want to be down there, I want to be playing, but you also have to see everything has its time, and then you move on to something else. And I mean, family life for me as well has filled an awful lot of that void also. So there's other priorities coming your way, and you just go and enjoy the game, be proud of what you did while you were playing it.
Yeah. Another thing that Nicholas raised as well in that question, Tomás, was he wants to know, do you feel that enough is done for former players in the game, former intercounty players who've had this experience, whether they've been lucky enough to win All-Irelands like you lads or played at the top level, and then they're out of the game? Are they looked after in terms of what happens to them next?
Yeah, I suppose I think Brendan alluded to it there. Sometimes when you go on too long at intercounty level, that you've nothing left in the tank to give back to the club, and I think the club is partial to all of this, right? That when you do finish intercounty, that maybe you have a 3 or 4 year period that you can go back and contribute as a player, be part of the setup back there as well, because it will bring you down from the very, very highs that you're on, and it'll bring you back down to level very, very quickly as well, because like. There is a huge gap. I mean, to where intercounty guys are at, they're on such a high playing at intercounty level, right? That when you do finish, what do you do on your given Tuesday night or the Thursday night, as Brenda said, 5 nights a week? The GPA has helped greatly on that side for guys that have run into a bit of difficulty, guys that have struggled career-wise or financial-wise or anything. They've helped them in no end there. But at the end of the day, there's nothing it will ever replace playing and being on the pitch and being on the field of play. Nothing will replace it. Or
you could take a cue from the man beside you here, from Brendan Cummins, and go down to Kerry and help sort them out down there.
And go to Laois and go to other places in Ballybay and stuff like that, right? I mean, discover Ireland, fair play to them, great man for it.
Wherever you can go to help.
Maybe, you might be able to help Wexford hurling, because the next question comes, I suspect, from a Wexford man. Gerard O'Brien poses the question anyway, and he wants to know what you think are the prospects for Wexford hurling this year, given the fact that they would look back maybe at the championship last year and think to themselves, but for a puck of a ball here and there, things might have worked out slightly differently for them.
There's no doubt about that. Liam Dunn fought tooth and nail earlier on this year to get an extension in his term with these players, so he wants to work on them over the long term. He sees the potential, and having spoken to Liam a few times, a great man to have in charge of a team, rebuilding again, which is very, very important. So he wants stability in the long term, and he's going to get that, to be fair, at the Wexford County Board. And like you said, they drew with Clare last year, and Clare were looking out at Thurles that night.
Yeah, because Wexford, Tomás, are one of those counties that you're always thinking to yourself, they should be higher up the pecking order than they are.
Michael, we can all remember '96, I think, isn't it? Back in, it's just what they brought to the game, right? And the players that were there deserved their All-Ireland success. And we need days like that again. We need Wexford hurling. And it isn't alone just about Wexford. It's about Offaly. It's about the teams that had the success in the past. And my fear is that there is a bit of elitism coming in. There is the 5 or 6 teams that are pulling away, and the others are actually slipping and sliding. And the gap is beginning to get bigger, And if there is anything that come out of any television deals, whether it is RTE or somebody else, right, and the money that comes from it, I would encourage the GPA, maybe we need to concentrate and get more money, get more coaches into these guys.